the School of Architecture, Kamaraja School of Architecture, was already involved with the Milland's study in 96-97 with Charles Correa. In fact, it was the design cell of Kamaraja which took up this study, and there was already a discussion around the plan prepared and the interest shown. So, and the Millands went the way it went even that time. I mean, the government simply shelved the report at that time, saying that it is not kind of, and there was a long kind of a period of silence in the Millands. So, and that time within the school we were already discussing the whole idea of deindustrialization. The industrial landscape, the city is becoming deindustrialized, industries being moved out of the city, and the regional plan had already kind of regional plan of the MMRDA had already had a policy to move out industries of the city. With industries moving out of the city, markets becoming kind of loose, in a sense that today markets are not really through the transactions in the market has become very different. So the markets which used to be the market from all the way from Crawford Market to Kamatipura, that whole market, Bindi Bazaar, Nal Bazaar, Kalbadevi, Valkeshwar, this whole area, the market area, the spice markets, this whole thing, the kind of transactions have changed. It is not, you go to a shop and then you take from a wholesaler. Those things have started changing. It has become more global, more internet based, more kind of, people go to the warehouses now which are located outside the city and stuff like that. So there was already a context of the port slowly kind of losing its business in the city. The industries had moved out, nothing was coming. The markets were moving out again. At the same time, the port was also internally undergoing transformation, in the sense that the depth of the sea at that particular point was not enough for large motherships to come in. So only subsidiary and secondary ships would come in and stuff like that. Moreover, the port was managing cargo in a very different way, and from mid 70s onwards, 80s onwards, actually more acutely, most of the cargo was becoming containerized. Whereas this port had warehouses, to keep, sacks and bags and stuff like that. Whereas the goods would come in containers, so they were not geared towards containerized cargo also. At the same time, the government had already established the JNPT on the other side of the harbour. So this port was losing business any which ways. It was losing business because, one, the context of the city, the industries were moving out, the markets were moving out, the markets were changing their this thing, the depths were not enough, the kind of cargoes, so it was losing business, and you could see that loss of business over its its own accounts. So that is the context where we felt that in the few years to come, this land which was at that time, I think we estimated it from their own numbers, something like 1800 acres, but 1800 acres includes many other lands in Titwa and Mahin and stuff like that, but those are small, of course. So these so we felt that along with this large process of deindustrialization, where mills have moved out, the auto industries from Vikhroli and Ghatkopar have moved out, the chemicals industries have moved out from the city, even the port will move out, or at least diminish or close down, or it will substantially diminish. Moreover, the port itself has been, giving VRS to people, voluntary retirement, under the voluntary retirement scheme, have been removing people from its staff. So it has kind of, it had become very small, and it was shrinking in terms of its. So we felt that there is a need to kind of rethink of this land which the port has been occupying as a part of this broad deindustrialization process. And that is where we initiated a study as to what is really happening in the port and what are the possibilities. UDRI was also thinking on similar lines, so we joined forces and the study was made on a situation assessment of what is the port. And to kind of tell you very honestly, the whole idea at that time was to kind of think of the eastern waterfront, and waterfront in its romantic and in its kind of aspirational idea of being a waterfront for leisure. So that is a whole thinking, that it will have water terminuses, it will have these boulevards to walk around, it will have nice spaces, it will become a waterfront almost along the lines of the western waterfront, the Juhu Beach and the Marine Drive and all of those things. So that is the whole thing, and that is the tone of the report also. If you notice very carefully, that became the tone of the report also. While studying the field itself, one realized that actually the land is, it has been historically a place of work, and it is not as empty as it looked to be, physically, actually, as well as conceptually. Conceptually first, in the sense that there were so many people who were renting spaces, simply holding, but also re-renting, subletting and all of those things in the entire of the portlands. It was a dark side of the city though, but every city will have a dark side now. I mean, what is the fun of the city if you don't have the dark side? So it has the dark side. But if you leave the operational docks, which is around 13 kilometers in length, the remaining 15 odd kilometers, the Navy sits there. That is one of the things. There's a huge informal industry almost of shipbreaking, related activities of shipbreaking. There are all kinds of informal activities. They deal with steel, with sand, with tiles, with all kinds of things that come to the city. So there is a full, and there is of course the bulk oil cargo, which the MUPT is doing really very well. MUPT is not losing business; it's really doing very well. So that will remain in the north. There are all these bulk cargos. So it appeared to be not really historically a place of work and stuff like that. So it's not an easy land. It's not as empty as it looked like. It had to kind of respond in a very different way. So that is I think the learning from the field visit that we got. Of course, the report had to be ended and report was submitted and all of those things happened. Subsequently, the government of Maharashtra appointed a task force, made the MMRDA commissioner as the chairperson of the task force to look at the potentials. This was under Ranganathan when he was the chief secretary, and I think Ramanand Tiwari was the secretary for urban development. So the task force was set up, and then I don't think anything came out of the task force. It kind of so people have been thinking about the portland, so to say, which has been constantly rechristened as Eastern Waterfront. So I think that imagination itself is something which requires thorough interrogation as to what happens to work really in the city. Because work is moving out anyways in the city. So where is the context for work in the city, and why should waterfront be only a place of leisure? Why can't it be dark and dirty? Because that is also a part of the city, and dark and dirty, it only looks dark and dirty. It actually is, it holds tremendous number of people. It kind of holds so many claims. So what happens to all of those things? So that is a part. So if you look beyond the rhetorics of infrastructure, housing, and rights and livelihoods, I think it's about the space of the city and the form which is able to afford people and the activities and housing and livelihoods and all of those things. So Eastern Waterfronts provided that space substantially. You say Daru Khana, you say all the bandars that are there. You come down to Dockyard Road, Sanders Road, this whole Elphinstone estate, the entire thing holds a lot of people. It has given livelihood, places to stay. Now every new government has shown some interest or the other in the portlands. The governments had their own kind of I think problems, because the portlands, a lot of land has been leased also to very large industrialists. There are, all the mill owners have warehouses over there. So there are large industrialists who have leased land, and I don't think for example Hindustan Lever they have huge amount of land which is they're sitting on it. Tatas have a lot of land, so there's a lot of land which is there. It's kind of, so governments are unable to negotiate and stuff like that. So I think with this government's kind of it has the confidence which comes from its majority. It has that brashness which it is obtained from its majority votes that it has received. So I think this government has been pushy, and within first 6 months itself it set up this committee, and it is kind of looking at it very carefully and stuff like that. I think looking at it is very important at this moment, and the government looking at it is very, very important. It's a very, very critical thing. I have no idea what the government is thinking on it at the moment. I have three or broad ways in which one could think about portlands. One is I feel that Bombay is consuming substantial amount of commodities on daily basis, and these commodities can come through the port itself. Okay, so it doesn't have to come via JNPT and then go all over the world and then come through either Vasai or Thane. It can come straight away through this port, through smaller ships. It can come. So there is because Bombay is consuming, it requires commodities, and somewhere these commodities have to be stored. It need not be stored in Bhiwandi. Why should it be stored in Bhiwandi? It can be stored inside Bombay also. So I think there is a context for the port to exist, just with respect to the commodities which are being consumed inside the city. All right. So that is one context, and that also gives a context to the port to exist, on a perpetuity. The port has to exist because port is a very fundamental thing in the city. And this, so that is one. Number two, I feel it's a large piece of land, 1800 acres and all of those things. One cannot think of it in isolation in terms of what is to be provided and for whom it is to be provided and stuff like that. The politics internally are very intense. There is land, people who are claiming and claiming land. There's a question of livelihoods. There is a question of what kind of informal, illegal activities which go on, what kind of activities which are environmentally, socially not compatible for a long-term sustainability of the city. All these have to be interrogated and worked out, not with its internal logic, but they have a relationship with the city. So the second point I want to make is that when you think of the Portland, you also think it as a part of the city. It requires to kind of, it's an opportunity for the city, so to say, not an opportunity, but it is able to kind of, it's a part of the city. You can't kind of, you touch that, you ruffle many other parts of the city. So that is the second thing. The third thing, what I would like to say is also, there has been some discussion about international cultural centers and a world-class conference facility and all of those things, hotels and stuff like that. One tends to believe that there is a push that the government wants to kind of push this whole situation into looking at a cultural-based economy, a culture-based economy, which seems to be a logical kind of a economic orientation for the future of the city, because anyways one has seen the decline of industries almost to the point of no return. One is already seeing a decline of commerce in the city and finance. One is already seeing very clearly the real estate rates are coming down, all of those things. And the city has huge assets and potential to kind of generate a culture-based economy. I think that's very important. So if you want to look at it as a culture-based industry, then you have to find ways how the people who are living in that place, as well as how others, how will they integrate in this economy. So if you want to kind of push for that, then you will require not just building hotels and stuff like that, but you'll have to kind of set up many complementary things. You need to set up universities, you need to set up training centers, you need to set up all kinds of facilities, art districts, a whole lot of things that you need to complement to kind of create a cultural ecosystem. So I think if one is thinking of a culture-based economy, then you need to do many more things and find ways in which you kind of integrate it. That is number 3. Number 4, I feel there is still relevance of thinking waterfronts as a place of work. Why should all waterfronts be a place of leisure? And why can't work integrate better with the city? For example, why should those 13 kilometers where the port is, operational dock is, why should it have this huge wall separating the port from the city? What is to be hidden? If you open up that, make a transparent wall. I mean, you can do many things to do it. There's a way in which you open up the city to the waterfront and let the port go on. I mean, port will go on its own. What is this whole security fear actually? And it's fear more than, if you build the wall, there will be more of a problem. So I think you have to find the architecture of work and how it complements with the life in the city. So I think the architecture of the work is something which one needs to focus on as far as the form and the development and all of those things. So to quickly kind of summarize the orientation that I would think really is that, one, it's not an empty place. There are a lot of people who are living in the city, who are living in the portlands. It has a context that the port, the port is shrinking. All other activities around it are also, it will shrink all other activities. So it is better to kind of change it immediately, because the port, it's a fallacy to think that the port will revive to its old glory at this moment. It will not, because it's kind of there are many other ports which are much cheaper. So it is a lost business. but the port can still get business for the commodities which are coming to the city. It doesn't make sense to go to this thing and turn around the whole world and come back. So it's that's a clarity. So keep that part within the city. Keep your oil cargo. Use remaining lands judiciously, in a way. And if you are thinking of a culture-based economy, then you kind of find ways how do you integrate people, because it's impossible to kind of you'll have to push. You'll have to push through certain interventions. You'll have to push the city, nudge. You can't push. You have to nudge the city through your interventions. But you'll have to find, because there are many cases. For example, there are people who have been living there for 30 years, 40 years, occupying land. That question, where will they go? There are, and it's a substantial number of people. It runs in thousands. So what will happen to them? You can't just move them out of the city or put them somewhere in Titwala or something like that. You can't put them. They have to be in the city. They have primarily because of occupancy, they have obtained their rights in the city, and their rights need to be respected. Find a way in which these people get integrated in the development. That is the whole plan. So I think that balance is something which is critical. The economy is changing. These are symptoms of how that whole economy changes and whom it kind of gets in or moves out. In that economic shift, in that mega economic shift, because it's already kind of it's underway, how do you strategically kind of find place for your inhabitants? How do you kind of regenerate? How do you take a long-term perspective? There has to be, the city has to produce something. Till 1980s it produced a lot. Since the 80s it has not been producing, and one sees a decline of the city since the 80s. People have not been coming in. It has become more extremist in its orientation. The businesses have reduced. So people have, so you see a decline. So it has to produce something. So you have to find what can it produce and how you will help people to produce, rather than trying to look at it simply as a real estate endeavor. So what it can produce is our cultural objects. If it can produce cultural objects, then might as well. And the cultural industry is a substantially large industry. It employs people in all ways. So if it is going to kind of become a cultural city, then you might as well better design it for it. Have a large policy to kind of design for it. Otherwise, it appears to be some piecemeal kind of you make it, you create some housing, you create some you create some transportation, water transportation, and these kind of things. It doesn't. They will get stuck in their own kind of politics of land. They will get stuck in their whole. So it goes without idea. If you have 25 big ideas, 25 small ideas which are kind of going implemented, it will go piecemeal. Whoever benefits from whatever will kind of obtain, will push for that, and then you will get. For example, I see, the cotton green warehouses being the most vulnerable places, because their titles are clear. They will undergo transformation immediately. Some commercial offices will come up, all of those things will come. Whether the city requires more commercial offices, what will these commercial offices do, what will it produce in the next 15 years, how it kind of reorient itself, these are questions to be asked. So I think when such a big thing is happening, you have to ask big questions of the city, and big questions will involve specific answers to kind of nudge to reorient For example, Delhi removed its industry from its, it did a very problematic thing. It removed industries from within it. But it got in 25 universities. Today, Delhi is a completely different place, and it has got people. It's not an elite city. You cannot have an elite city. Elite city is a enclave. It's a gated community. You cannot have. It's not a city then. City is when it is kind of, it has all strata. So it is, so you have to find, right now, from the way newspapers are reporting, it appears to be some kind of a tussle between, real estate developers and the government, and who wants to do what. So I hope this committee has provided, recommendations which are like long-term, sustainable, which gets work in the city, which kind of thinks of the city also. There have been cases of parallel planning processes that take place in the city. I call it bypass and short circuits. For example, if it is difficult for the airport to negotiate with the people of the city and the municipality of the city, what does the airport do? Airport makes itself an island, and gets itself declared an SPA, and makes some agency a planning authority for that, so that everything will be easy for it. You take Gorai Manori case, you take Oshiwara case, you take Nariman Point case, you take Bandrakula Complex case, you can take the case of Dharavi SRA, you take Udalatak Terminus. I mean, these are places which are within the city, part of the city, contribute substantially to the economy of the city, will have impact on the future of the city, but the city and its people have no right to think about it, or plan it. So it is I think, if it gives an operational, logistical ease, then it may be a good thing, But there should be somebody who should have an integrated thinking in mind. Irrespective of 1,000 people planning the city, there should be somebody thinking in an integrated manner, somewhere. And who better than the Bombay Municipal Corporation can think in an integrated manner about Bombay? That is the whole argument. So the special planning areas and special planning authorities have been set up by the intention of setting it up is to kind of look at two things. One is to generate a place very quickly through an intensive kind of approach, and secondly to deal with difficult areas. You can't call Dharavi a difficult area because 60% of the city lives there. Yeah, so the entire city is difficult. Then it's not. You can't say that. Nor can you say Gorai Manori is a difficult area. Nor can you say airport is a difficult area. In that sense, everything is a difficult area. So what is and why not Bombay Municipal Corporation can deal with the difficult areas? So that is the whole thing. So I feel this SPA is fundamentally there's a problem in thinking of planning through SPAs. There's a problem. If there is an argument that they provide operational ease and logistical ease, might as well, but find way to integrate it with the rest of the city's planning. That is a thing. You need to find way to integrate it. For example, if MBPT wants to kind of develop its own place, then at least find a committee in which all stakeholders are represented. Number one. Number two, find a way, have separate specific sections of the plan where you talk of integrating with the rest of the city. Find a way in which agencies can be integrated. So I think that those building those links are very important in case of SPAs. Okay. So I think that is a key. Otherwise, from what is going on at the moment, it appears that SPAs are created when state government wants to kind of, keep its foot in certain very, lucrative spaces, and with experience of Gorai Manori and the airport, it appears that there are large builders, developers, industrialists who push the government to create such SPAs. So it is that kind of a thing. So SPAs are a useful kind of strategy instruments, but within city it's always a question whether you should have them within cities or not. And if you have them, then what terms that you should kind of add to them so that they integrate with the rest of the city. What are the terms? For example, airport is a part of the city and it is sitting in the city. For example, today there is a Sahar road which is built to the airport, from the highway to the airport. The Sahar road, as it was planned, was over the Sahar road. Actually, the Sahar elevated road was over the Sahar road. It has been shifted and made into some new location. The biggest suburban, semi-public transport system, which is the rickshaws, as well as the buses, are not allowed to ply on that new road. It is not as if the airport has built that road. The airport has given some money, but the road was built by the Development Authority, the Metropolitan Authority, MMRDA, with funds from the central government. So every rickshawala is also paying for the road, but not allowed. It's a public road. It's a DP road, not allowed. So you can't make such things exclusive. This is what happens when you make, SPAs. You make it exclusive. People are not allowed to do things. Instead of finding ways to integrate with the city, they find ways to make it as exclusive. They make it gated communities. What is the point in giving so much FSI for Vadala truck terminus? Ultimately, it was truck terminus, no? So these are the questions that to be answered. So I feel it appears that there are, bigger industrialists and developers who are kind of, forcing the government to get this thing. That's very clear. But I feel, if there is a logistic ease, then find ways to integrate. I think this is a key. With MBPT, I think there will be an operational ease if there is a new agency which is looking specifically at it. You have to find a way in which the municipality finds a part in this whole thing, the regional authority finds a part in the whole thing, the workers union find a part in the whole thing, the informal labor find a part in the whole thing, because they are key stakeholders. It's not only the MPT and its trustees, but and the central government agencies or the PMO's office, which have nothing to do with, Bombay Port land. I mean, it's absurd. Why is the PMO's office thinking of, land in Bombay? As if they don't have any work. It's an absurd thing. Why was the shipping minister, thinking of land in Bombay and thinking of land development? He has to do shipping. Bloody let him do shipping. What is this whole interest and push for land in Bombay? It's like weird, no? It's an absurd thing. You don't allow people who are experts, whose business it is. It's the state government's business to think of all this, because land is a state government issue. So let the state government think about it. No, the PMO and the shipping ministry wants to think about it. It's the business of the city. No, the municipal corporation is kept out of it. It's the business of the people who are living there. No, the informal and the formal labor. No, it is a business of the central government. It's a problem. It's an absurd thing. No, why are all these ministers and the prime minister interested in this land? What is this whole push? And if you want to kind of think of Bombay and Bombay's economy and stuff like that, then you need to do more things. Unfortunately, the idea of development that is pushed by all governments, including this government in its full phase, development means increase in consumption for this government and for any government and for the World Bank, for everybody. If you are showing growth, you are showing development if you have better commodities to consume in the next year, in the next phase of your life. But development has never been equated to equity, which is the context. So equalizing something doesn't appear in development rhetoric ever. It's only about increasing commodity, increasing consumption, and we consume so much, and we consume kind of quite useless things that there's no question. So I think that is something which at the central government they should think of. Why are they bothered of this piece of land? Yeah, leave it to the state and the city government, and they will do better. Absurd है ना?
That's it.
हो गया?
Yes.
चलो.